Hi, I am Lucas, a PhD student at UC Irvine. In this study, we sought to understand how people would prefer to describe foods when given more flexibility in journaling. We therefore built and deployed Modit, a flexible cross-platform prototype that supports various input methods. In analyzing usage logs and interviews, we identified a high variance in strategies and preferences for recording foods. Also, image classification and NLP services interpreted logs fairly well, but we identified missed opportunities in their outputs.